Guys, this is gonna be a big one. Season 16, or Season 2026, whatever naming convention you want to use for this, has finally been released, and let's just say a lot more stuff is happening than what most people anticipated. So before I go through these changes and offer my thoughts on them, based on my video in regards to the main problem with League of Legends right now, in my opinion, and I would say it's an opinion shared by quite a few people, is that the past couple years, namely 2013, 2014, or 2023 rather, 2024 and 2025, have felt pretty sterile for the most part. It felt like the changes that they were adding to the game were quite conservative, and even though there were some meaningful gameplay adjustments made to the game, for example, they adjusted the Rift so that the formation of the Rift is more symmetrical. It's definitely different in terms of like jungle pathing and just overall rotations and stuff. Or, for example, they added things like Otacon and Void Grubs, which, funnily enough, those are getting taken out. Or Void Grubs is staying, but feats of strength, Otacon, and whatnot are getting taken out. Overall, when it came to those kinds of changes, while they did add more to enhance the game's experience, it didn't really do much to change League of Legends the way we see it, right? You remember the stuff they added back in the old days. They would completely change Dragon, they would change the Rift in like a more substantial way with like the Elemental Rifts and stuff like that. They just haven't really done that for a long time. And I think one of the things that I kind of urged the league to do was take more risks, even if it meant throwing the game upside down and causing people to complain about balance issues or things being overpowered and whatnot. The point is that they should at least make an attempt to try and innovate and do something that has been completely unprecedented before, just like what they did back in the 2010s. They sort of did that with 2026, in that among many other things, such as improving ranked, or not really improving ranked, more like making adjustments and changes to the experience, they've really added something that I think, while it probably is going to be very messy from a balancing point of view, fundamentally changes League of Legends the way we know it. And I'm excited for that, because as much as it could definitely throw a wrench into our ability to figure out what roles are better than others, I can anticipate Season 16 being very different from Season 15 and the seasons that came before. So the main thing that they're essentially doing, and I actually think I can find it here, we'll talk about the items in a minute because that is a big deal. In fact, I have skin spotlights right here and they're kind of showing every single item. I want to go through the role quests because that's like the main thing that, from a gameplay point of view, will change the experience of League of Legends. So role quests essentially make it so every single role has their own distinct objective within the greater objective that is to win the game. For example, when you do jungle, the mini objective as a jungler is to complete your jungle item. And to do that, you have to go, you start at 40 stacks and then it goes down to 30, 29, whatnot. At 20, it turns into Unleash Smite, and then at 0, it consumes the item so you can buy an actual item slot, upgrades your pet and your smite to now become Primal Smite and have additional empowered effects. Support has their own quest as well, where they essentially collect gold from last-hitting minions, or triggering the relic shield or harassing enemy champions. After certain thresholds, you get access to wards, and then you can get your special item, whether it be Celestial Opposition, which is the damage reduction thing, or the Solstice Slay, which gives you healing upon crowd control and whatnot. Those quests are already there and they're being overhauled to some extent. However, top, mid, and ADC are getting their own quests as well. To briefly paraphrase, top lane is going to be getting Summoner Teleport for free. Now you can still get Teleport prior to unlocking the free Summoner Teleport, and if you do, that Teleport will turn into a big shield on use right over here. In addition to the Summoner spell upgrade, top laners will also receive upfront bonus experience, more experience from future last hitting and CSing, and an increased level cap. Ever since the game has come out, outside of Earth, the level cap has always been 18. And champions have been bounced around that. Abilities are bounced around, finishing off at level 18, stats are bounced around level 18, the whole shebang, right? Increasing the level cap, for all we know, it might not be as substantial because again, abilities are meant to finish off at 18. And ability spiking is where most of the benefit from leveling comes from. That being said, the range of base stats you get, attack damage, armor, magic resist, attack speed, that does still matter. Getting an extra 2, 3, or 4 levels worth of stats, I believe one level up gives you more stats or more combat stats than 300 gold. So it does matter, it's a non-negligible amount, especially because after you complete full builds, right? Let's say you're at 18 and you have 6 items and whatnot, most champions can't get any stronger. getting extra levels will put you at a definitive statistical advantage over a champion who's stuck at level 18. That is what I mean by Riot taking risks and trying to do something that the game has never anticipated before. Something like this fundamentally upheaves League of Legends. We don't know to what extent it will. Maybe it won't matter all that much because again, how often do games get you to level 18? Some people, they end games at like 15, 16. But typically, when you think of what champion is going to hit level 18 first, it usually is top lane because top lane tends to side lane the most, so they get the most amount of experience. This could matter. A lot of top laners are very level dependent. That's where we get most of our statistical advantage because we have less kill participation, so we'll get less gold from killing champions. So we kill creeps and we get experience. We outlevel a lot of champions and, usually top laners will be 2 if not 3 levels above the ADC and support, right? This is a big deal, especially because now this will heavily encourage the use of taking Ignite or any kind of combat summoner, exhaust, heal, ghost, what have you, because you no longer have to think about the trade-off or the opportunity cost of not being able to respond later in the game if the opponent has teleport and you don't. Again, the extra shield you get from taking teleport already and then getting it upgraded again should matter quite a bit if you're playing, let's say, a tank or someone who has to scale, like let's say Kale or Ryze, stuff like that. But I think this will definitely significantly change the dynamic and agency of top lane because now it'll encourage more split pushing. And while I don't find split pushing to be the most healthy win condition, it should still exist. I think top laners should always be given the ability to do something else, especially when all hell breaks loose and the only way they feel like they can carry games is by running down a side lane and trying to backdoor. I like it. I like it because it's not just a neutral objective that, frankly speaking, people thought when they added Rift Herald, when they added Void Grubs, oh, it will make top lane matter more. Junglers are going to want to come top lane and do stuff. Not really, because a jungler could just solo the grubs and then, yeah, right? The top laner doesn't really benefit from it. But giving top lane an exclusive privilege that no other role can have does present an opportunity for top lane to matter more, especially in the early to mid to late game. Now, to be fair, this is being added to every single role. It's not like just top lane is getting something special. In the case of mid lane, mid laners are now the only ones who can get tier 3 boosts, to my knowledge. Feats of strength is being taken out of the game completely, which I appreciate because I felt like it definitely put too much pressure on being proactive in the early game, which isn't bad, mind you, but because counter matchups can force you to lose lane priority for most of the game, a lot of the times it felt like Feats of Strength was out of your control, right? You just had to snowball or pray that you could snowball early or take a lucky fight or something like that, and to put way too much agency on the jungler, which already made the role more overpowered than it is. In any case, mid laners are now getting tier 3 boot upgrades for free, as well as a 4-second recall with a cooldown. So they basically get to have Baron recall every so often. It's on a cooldown. A few of the boots had some modifications, but mostly look similar to the ones you already know from the live game. Perfectly fine. That doesn't matter too much, I don't think, since, it depends on how much they're going to balance the boots, because currently the upgrades to Feats of Strength, namely the tier 3 boots, have been toned down over the course of the year. They started off quite overpowered, frankly speaking, at the beginning, and then after a while they started to make them less and less impactful because, again, you're giving one team an advantage that the other team can never measure up to. I know that's the whole point of neutral objectives, but still, this doesn't matter all that much. The empowered recall is, I guess it's helpful, but mid laners already have a decent amount of agency and presence in the mid to late game, and just the champions that they play, so just giving them a bit of a stat increase, not a big deal. I still think that the top lane improvements with the free teleport and the increased level cap matter a lot more, especially the bonus experience. Now, bot lane will get more gold. That's a big deal, right? Just being able to accelerate gold faster, which I don't mind because a big pain point with bot lane has always been they just power spike later than most other champions. Top laners are usually good to go by 1 item or 2 at latest. Mid lane, same thing. As soon as they get their first item, which is typically a mana item, they're also good to go. Junglers, same thing. 1 item, ready to fight. Supports, as soon as they get their boots, they're basically ready to go because they depend more on abilities and not items. AD carries, however, are almost always irrelevant, or that's not the right word. They almost always exert comparatively less pressure on the map until 3 or 4 items, at which point the outcome of the game is deterministically decided most of the time, right? So giving AD carries a faster curve in progression to where they can get their hands on items more quickly is certainly very much appreciated, but what matters more kind of another issue with AD carries is that they start out weak. They power spike at 3 or 4 items when their crits actually start mattering, right? Because at 4 items, you get max crit rate, you get a lot of attack speed, you get on-hit effects, you get a lot of damage. But from that point onward, they actually fall off a little bit. I say that because damage, at a certain point, everyone gets a lot of, right? What happens after, usually your 5th or 6th item, is taken to respond against the enemy team. If you're a top laner, if you're playing Fiora, Camille, Irelia, Renekton, that is when you typically start building items like GA. That's when you start building items like maybe a Thornmail, or not necessarily much on like the fighters, but if you're playing a Bruiser, for example, you would usually start buying stuff like Kinetic Rootcurn, Randuin's, Thornmail, GA. If you're a fighter, you might take, maybe QSS, you might take Sterex, you might take GA, you might take Death Stance, Maw, whatever is necessary to respond against whoever is the most threatening member on the enemy team. Same applies to jungle, mid, whatnot, armor penetration, magic penetration, whatever you need. For AD carries, they don't benefit as much or have as much of an incentive to build a situational responsive item against the enemy team, but at the same time, anything more that they get doesn't really matter too much. On the other hand, it becomes easier to one-shot an AD carry late game because more base stats, more damage output, more durability, so like a Darius can run down a Caitlyn even if the Caitlyn is 1 item above the Darius. The second part is that they're basically giving AD carries the ability to actually bridge that gap in relative power with the other champions by allowing them to purchase a 6th item. The thing about AD carries is that Berserker's Greaves is, for the most part, replaceable. Sorry, there's noise outside, but anyways. You can replace Berserker's Greaves. I believe in most instances, you do lose a little bit of movement speed, but Phantom Dancer is typically an upgrade for AD carries. ADCs very rarely can rely on movement speed to escape anything, right? Like if an assassin's on the ADC, they're gonna die. 50 more movement speed doesn't really matter. Having a 6th item on the other hand does kind of matter. It gives you a little bit more to work with, and it also might open up the opportunity for you to get those defensive purchases. They're kind of doing that by making it so you can still hold your boots, but buy a 6th item. AD carries get to have a 7th item slot, effectively. That's interesting, because now they don't feel like they have to decide between, oh, do I have to get armor penetration, do I have to get a lifesteal, or can I get like a Jak'Sho or even a Randuin's, right? On-hit champions like Vayne and Kog'Maw can afford to buy these defensive items because they don't care about crit. But crit-based marksmen like Caitlyn, Jinx, Yunara, right? Like they do want to get max crit. But they do still would like the opportunity to purchase a defensive item. The problem is, they also have to buy lifesteal, they also have to buy armor penetration. Well, armor penetration and crit go hand in hand, you get the idea. They need a little bit more inventory space than most other champions do because they have way more stats they want to aim for. Top laners, like if you're playing a fighter, you only care about AD, armor, magic resist, and health. If you're playing a mid laner, you only care about AP, cooldown reduction, magic resist, and maybe Azanias, right? AD carries need attack damage, attack speed, lifesteal, crit chance, armor penetration. They need like everything basically. So giving them a 7th item slot, while it completely undermines our preconceptions of the game and the limitations of the game, is something that I think should be appreciated because League is willing, or Riot is willing, to push the limits of the game. And that's what they were known for back in the 2010s. They were so good at just throwing a curveball and forcing us to relearn the game. Yes, at a certain point people became fatigued by it, right? Because, there's that popular video that Doublelift made about the downsides of a constantly changing game, which to an extent I still agree with, right? Like you gotta be careful not to completely change the game every 2 weeks or something. But not changing the game at all is also the wrong way to go about it because it leads to the game being stale, repetitive, monotonous, whatever form of adjective you want to use for that. I love this premise. The execution and implementation, of course, will be left up to interpretation, and we will need to collect a lot of empirical data to figure out what changes overpowered, right? For all we know, a level 22 Mundo running you down is going to be hell on earth, or a 600 AD, 100% crit rate, 90 lethality Caitlyn headshot is doing 3000 damage, overtuned. That can be tempered. The point is, Riot is trying to do something unprecedented, which they haven't done in so long. The last time they did that was Mythic items, and even though people complained about it back then, in retrospect, the point of League and what makes it such an enduring game, what makes it so popular even after being around for a decade and change, is because they innovate and redesign the game. It's not the same experience over and over again. But the past 2 years, it kind of was, right? Like, I've been playing League since like 2015, and I don't think I've enjoyed the game as much now that I did back then. Granted, that's because, you know, when you play a game for so long, you get bored of it. That's just how it is. Still though, something like this could definitely throw a wrench into things. There were changes that they did to supports and jungles. Supports are getting new items and things like that. But generally speaking, I like the premise of every role having their own unique power. Sorry, that's my Uber Eats. Anyways, yeah. I like the premise of every role having their own unique benefit or their own unique advantage, because that's something that was never considered before. And yeah, anyway, so that's my thought about role quests. I'm pretty excited to see it. I think it'd be very interesting, very entertaining, and I'm all for that because the game has been pretty boring for the past couple of years. Now, gonna briefly go over the items, and rank changes, like, you know, you can look at it on your own. My TLDR on the rank changes, which are not on this, but the idea of like autofill being able to give you double LP if you win, and saving your LP if you lose, if you perform decently well on it. On one hand, I'm okay with that because, yes, the team with autofill champions is definitely at a major disadvantage, especially if it's like autofill jungle versus a jungle main. On the other hand, it does exacerbate the issue of LP inflation in that, like, you can have a 49% win rate in League on like 1,000 games and still climb because there are so many ways to compensate for LP, right? You know, it's... And elo inflation has been it's a problem that only really affects the upper echelon of play. Like, you don't see gold or platinum players complaining about elo inflation. It's mostly just like grandmaster, master, challenger players who complain about that. Kind of a first world problem, I suppose. But as someone who actually just recently hit masters again after not hitting it for a while, I do think that, yeah, the quality of games at higher level is definitely degrading because masters now was like Diamond 4 back in 2018. We'll have to see. I think reinstating dual queue for Apex tiers is good too, because I don't like the idea of being able to only play by myself as soon as I hit master. Not that that's a bad thing, but you know, people were definitely nervous about the reintroduction of like dual queue abuse and like dual boosting and stuff like that. Because they added more ways to combat rank manipulation, it should even out. I think dual queue is a net positive for the game, even at the highest tiers of play. So I'm all for that. And I think the last one was... There's like one more thing, I think it's like right here. Let me find it. This one I was talking about, the Aegis of Valor, which talks about LP protection and LP doubling. Dodging as well. Dodging is... some people are affected by it, not many people are. Again, it's another issue that only really mainly affects the highest ranks in the game. Most of you watching will not experience this, but typically speaking, because now there's an incentive to play a game through even if you're autofill, with the Aegis of Valor, dodging should definitely decrease. I'm not too inconvenienced by it, like sure, it's annoying having to go through the entire champion select process over and over again, but at most you're losing about 5 minutes, like just watch YouTube or something while you're waiting for Q. Anyways, last thing we're going to do is we're going to go through the items, the new items they're adding to the game, because that's always fun. Scepter of Bonking is adding an AP Bruiser Spellblade, if I'm not mistaken. So this would be good to have on Gwen. It'd be good to have on maybe Fizz. Not that like Fizz takes Lich Bane, so it's kind of hard to say, but it's essentially an on-hit focused AP build. Maybe this could be applied on Volibear, because you do get quite a bit of ability haste and AP and attack speed. These are not final stats, by the way, they're not conclusive, it's just, again, as it says on screen, to give you an idea. Let's see, actually I should make this bigger. There you go. An extra on-hit effect is interesting because not many AP bruisers exist in the game that are on-hit effect related, and the ones that are somewhat on-hit effect based that do build Lich Bane, you know, like they would keep building Lich Bane, they would not build this. We'll see how useful that one is going to be. We have another item here, Emblem of All Inning. Attack speed, crit chance, and movement speed, and you get ultimate ability haste, so it's very similar to the experimental Hexblade. And in this case, it's for ADCs, so you could do true damage on crit for your next 3 attacks. Twitch would like this. Caitlyn would like this. Jinx. Does that apply to like AoE strikes though? That's an interesting thing, but this will be a very valuable tank busting item. Now, it says gain ultimate ability haste, so clearly it's meant for champions who do ultimate based fights, like Yunara. Yunara is a big deal. You have Zeri to some extent. We have Neela. I think Neela would like this as well. Vayne, not so much. Vayne's more of an on-hitter anyway. She doesn't really build crit chance. You could, but Vayne's more... She already has tank shredding, so she doesn't want this. Something like that, I guess. Not bad. I think it's important because we do need more tank busting on ADCs. I think ADCs have lost a lot of ability to tank bust after they lost Kraken Slayer, because Kraken Slayer used to do true damage. This one's an interesting one. It's an Omni-Vamp item. We have not had an Omni-Vamp item in a long time, because there used to be that whole sustained power creep with like Ravenous Hunter and stuff like that. This one, on the other hand, you get ability haste based on your AD. So you can already imagine any kind of fighter that is okay with not building necessarily durability to build this. You have like Zahen, especially Zahen. Zahen's gonna want this because you get the haste scaling with AD and Zahen gets a lot. It's hard to say whether or not a champion like Aatrox or Renekton wants this item, because on one hand it does benefit them. Tenacity is always good, the AD is good, they have a lot of attack damage, especially Aatrox, so they're gonna want to build an item like this because they get a lot of ability haste. You do get up to 15% Omni-Vamp if you get a takedown, but I think this might actually be more for assassins like Naafiri, Qiyana, Talon. Even then, if you think about it, like they don't really care about lifesteal because they're not going to be healing that much. Like their whole purpose is to go in, kill someone, and get the hell out. They're not trying to fight for long extended periods of time. I don't see a world where this will give many champions a reason to want to buy it, because for bruisers, they're going to want to build defensive stats. They're going to want AD, they're going to want HP, they're going to want armor. Perhaps skirmishers like Fiora. I think Fiora would be okay with this. Camille, I don't know. Irelia, to some extent. I would say she prefers Blade of the Rune King more than this. It's interesting because it seems like a very overpowered item at first glance, right? You get AD, you get Omni-Vamp, you get Tenacity, you get Ability Haste. Who doesn't want that? At the same time, it's mostly a stat stick, and there are better stat sticks out there. Assassins would want Hubris more than Bloodsphere. Bruisers would want Death Stance more than Bloodsphere. Skirmishers would want Triforce or something more than Bloodsphere. It's hard to justify purchasing this item specifically over any other AD item, but anyways, moving on. We have Assassin item. The names are not set in stone yet. A lot of AD, a lot of lethality, and a lot of ability haste, and dealing damage to a champion or epic monster deals additional true damage. I'm guessing that's kind of in the same vein as like Shadowcane passive, where it deals follow-up damage, only in the case of Shadowcane it's magic damage, in this case it's true damage. Taking down a champion within 3 seconds of damaging them grants a buff for 90 seconds, where your next attack against an epic monster or turret deals additional true damage over time. My only guess is that given that it looks like a pickaxe, this is for a side laning assassin. Which, you know, I mean, assassins do have great side lane pressure because they have good mobility, good 1v1 potential, so giving this to a Zed or a Talon, or, hear me out on this, even a Fiora, there's a world where Fiora might want this, right? Because even though she already does true damage, heavy split pushing, there could be a magical universe where you decide to go lethality on Yorick and do this. No, Yorick would still want Hullbreaker. Like Yorick, Irelia, Fiora, they still want Hullbreaker more than this one. But assassins don't want Hullbreaker. They might want this item. Adds a bit more options in what they can do. Interesting. It's an interesting item. I'm a fan of situational items because I don't want every item to just be like a generic everyone buys this item. People are complaining right now that every AD champion wants to buy Thunder Sky. Or like if you remember the Mythic items era, that was when every AD champion, whether you were a bruiser, a fighter, a skirmisher, was building Gore Drinker. We need to avoid that. I'm okay with there being items that people don't buy that often, but some champions might want it specifically. Mananomicon. It's another mana-based item, but strangely, not 600 mana, it's only 300. For 8 seconds, your spell costs 100% more mana, and you gain AP scaling with mana shielding, healing, and cooldowns progress 25% faster. Oh, it's inactive, so it's like you trigger it. I'll say Rice, Cassidon, anyone who goes the Rod of Ages and Sarah's Embrace combo. This could be a good third item to purchase. Or maybe fourth item. Again, a bit more situational because it's very burst heavy, like you want to use it for only 8 seconds. You do get a lot more power out of it, but because it's not a passive, it's inactive, there will be more niche use cases for it. Again, I'm all for it because I think we could have some more items that could be situationally very beneficial, but not abused by like every single champion. And it also allows the item to be balanced more cautiously, or not cautiously, but it allows the item to be in a more stable balancing position since you don't have to account for it, buffing like 6 different champions at once. Snowbow. Attack damage and crit strike, and you deal to 10% increased damage based on how far away the enemy is. Caitlyn, Twitch, Sivir maybe, if the ricochet bounces, Ashe to some extent, and whenever a champion you dealt damage to dies within 3 seconds, you gain 100% additional range for 6 seconds. Again, Twitch, Caitlyn, Ashe, Jinx will love this too because she can get the max proc, or she can't get the max proc, but like Jinx, Tristana, they'll be at like 650 plus attack range in the late game. Good for if you need to keep a decent line of scrimmage away from the enemy champion. Vayne, Nilah, Samira, they don't care about this item. But if you're playing a sniper champion like Caitlyn, Jinx, Tristana, well, they're not snipers, but you get what I mean, the ones that like bar attack speed range. Kog'Maw, well, Kog'Maw does get the extended attack range, but he doesn't build crit. This is very much like a Twitch type item in the mid to late game. Buff Engine, again, item names are not final, but this is the first aura item that we're going to be getting in a long time. When you slow or immobilize an enemy champion, you get a buff aura that gives bonus movement speed and attack speed to your team. So it's like Ardent Sensor, but instead of buffing your team, it's debuffing the enemy team to get that bonus. Pretty good, because I can see this being valuable on Bard. I could see this being valuable on Braum to some extent, because Braum does want attack speed to increase the rate at which you get the concussive blows. That'd be cool. Decent item, definitely really nice. It's also like a good overall defensive item because you get armor, MR, ability haste, HP. Can't go wrong with it. Then you have Mantle of the 12th Hour, a lot of HP and ability haste, and taking damage that will reduce your HP below 30% causes you to regenerate HP over 5 seconds, scaling with armor, MR, and HP regen. It is a Volibear passive, or it's like a Warmogs, where instead of consistent regeneration, it's a last-ditch effort regeneration. Mundo obviously would really love to have this item. He would still want Warmogs just for the full raw health, but I can see Mundo definitely wanting this because he typically pops his ultimate at low HP anyway. You got Savior's Mana Bell plus Super Bell, which is a tier item. I think it's a tier of the goddess item for healing and shielding. So Sona, maybe Taric, Sona. it's just Sona. I can't think of like any other, enchanters. It's weird because like they do want mana to spam their abilities, but no one has as much of a mana cost as Sona or Taric. So it's like just those two champions. It could be okay. I don't think it's that big of a deal. But you do get quite a bit of healing as well, so it's ultimately an enchanter based item. Now, of course, we do have Hextech Gunblade and Stormracer, they're coming back, and for the most part, it's exactly as you remember them. Katarina, Akali, the champions that really want to have Hextech Gunblade, congrats, your patience has paid off, although I know for a fact they're going to nerf that Omnivamp, because one of the biggest things that with Hextech Gunblade that people didn't like was how it made you basically unkillable after a certain point. If you could not burst a champion, they will sustain back up to max HP. Hextech Gunblade's always been a cult classic, and I'm sure everyone who wishes they could have Deathfire Grasp again, that was also another cult classic item. But either way, those are the new items, and then there are a few more things to talk about, like turrets now have plates, like tier 2 and 3 turrets all have tower plates and stuff. But bottom line is, again, the role quests. Like the role quests are such new territory for the game that we really can't decide if it's objectively good or bad for the game, but ultimately what I like about Season 16, and what makes me excited for it and optimistic about it, it's different. It's something we've never done before. And that's what I missed about League of Legends, is that yeah, sure, Otacon never happened before, Void Grubs never happened before, Beats of Strength never happened before, but there were sort of extensions of what we already had. Like ultimately Otacon was just bonus AD, right? That's what it is at the end of the day. You get that AoE slow upon killing a champion, but you know, like Void Grubs, they just make you take towers a little bit faster. Feats of Strength gives your boots a little bit more stats. Like those are all within the parameters of what we're used to. Giving AD carries the ability to build an extra item. While yes, that ultimately turns into stats, it presents an entire new realm of possibility for the game. Whole new meta developments too, like champions now have to be balanced around that, and champions have to be conceptualized around that, right? Like imagine top laners being 2 levels above every other champion. That has never happened before. Or imagine, for example, the top lane meta. Now that everyone is promised teleport, yes, you get a stronger teleport that gives you like a big shield if you take teleport at base and then you get the upgrade later. But even if you take Ignite, Exhaust, Barrier, Ghost, Heal, you get that and you still get teleport. Will early game lane bullies like Renekton, Pantheon, you know, champions who like to rush Ignite, they still have macro pressure in the mid to late game. They can still split push. The entirety of top lane was balanced around whether a champion took teleport or not. If you took Ignite, yes, you'd have more lane pressure, but you paid for it later on. Now you can take Ignite and still roam. Like that's insane. You have mid lane, which mid lane doesn't get too much, they just get extra boosts, but like 80 carries can now buy a 6th item. There's so much you can do with that. You can buy QSS, you can buy, you know, double life, you could buy so many items now. There were so many instances where 80 carries, and supports as well, like supports can now get control wards without having to occupy an item slot. They get Vigilant Warstone, like separately. Supports can now buy more items. That increases the power capacity and the output capacity of supports who prior could only buy 5 items because they needed to get control wards. This is just an entire new landscape for the game. I might be exaggerating it, it might be, you know, it might not be that big of a deal, but again, my point is, I like that Riot is taking a risk with the next year. That's all we need. If they're not going to make a League of Legends to it, they're just going to keep evolving this game. That is the point. They have to keep evolving. Something like this may appear to be power creep, right? Because again, we're increasing level cap, we're increasing item slots. Like, yeah, that is true. But this is exactly what I was referring to in the main problem with League, where it's like League has not done something out of the blue in a long time. And they're doing that right now. TLDR, I'm more excited about this than I am nervous about it. A lot of crazy shit's gonna happen, but I signed up for that. I wanted that to happen. So yeah, that's gonna be it. Anyways, a lot of rambling. My lunch is here, so I'm gonna go ahead and eat. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below if you are, you know, excited for the changes or not. What you think is gonna be overpowered and what you think is gonna get nerfed. But for the time being, if you enjoyed the video, I would appreciate it if you could leave a like and subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Vars, join my Discord server, and I think up here will be the other videos. Just watch whatever else is on my channel if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.